At 6:12 a.m., Gladys Bennett's white Range Rover idled crooked on Pier 47, driver's door flung wide to the slate-blue water of Boston Harbor. Her purse lay on the passenger seat with the zipper open, her phone face down on the rubber mat, the ultrasound photo half crumpled under the brake pedal. By 8:30, a microphone forest grew around her husband, tech billionaire Graham Whitfield, as he told the cameras she'd struggled and left in a moment of distress. "She ran," he said, jaw locked. Detective Marisol Vega watched his pupils instead of his words. The GPS log in evidence bag 14 said otherwise. The morning Gladys vanished, fog curled off the harbor like breath on a cold window. In Beacon Hill, the Whitfield brownstone glowed warm, all polished wood and the polite hush of money. Gladys padded past framed magazine covers of her husband, the visionary, the pivot king, the man who outsmarted the market, and carried decaf coffee to a couch that looked expensive and uncomfortable. She was 32, 7 months pregnant, and carrying weight she'd wanted all her life. She was also carrying a silence, the kind that makes you tiptoe in your own home. "Big day," Graham said, descending the stairs in running shoes and a perfect thermal. He kissed her forehead out of habit, not heat. "Board meeting at 9, the foundation gala tonight. You'll come, right?" "I promised Allison I'd help with her classroom supplies," Gladys said. "I'll meet you at the gala." His face tightened the way it did when he was about to call a compromise. Fine. He wasn't cruel. He was curated. She'd fallen in love with the version of him that fixed broken toasters in their first Cambridge apartment. He'd become the man who had a person for the toaster, a person for the person, and an NDA for them both. "I want you there," Graham said. "Optics matter. We're launching the maternal health initiative." Gladys rubbed the edge of the ultrasound photo like a worry stone. "Optics matter more than how I feel." He didn't answer. A driver texted that the car was ready. He left with the soft buzz of expensive efficiency. Gladys stood in the doorway, fingers on her belly. The baby kicked, a small, insistent drum. She told herself the lie she'd been living for months. When the baby comes, he'll soften. When the baby comes, he'll look up from the horizon and see me. The Range Rover's interior smelled like leather and mint gum. A small blue light near the dash blinked. She'd noticed it last week and had asked a mechanic at a Jiffy Lube. The kid had shrugged. Probably dealer junk. She had errands. She had a meeting of her own. Off the books, off the calendar, off the script. At 6:12 a.m., she turned out of Beacon Hill and headed toward the waterfront, where the fog moved like a curtain. By 7:10, Detective Marisol Vega stood by the abandoned SUV with a pen behind her ear and irritation in her bones. The GPS unit showed the car had traveled from the brownstone to Pier 47 without deviations, cleaner than a nurse's hands before a procedure. Too clean. Vega grew up in Hyde Park with 5 brothers and a mother who could smell a lie through a closed door. She'd learned to watch how people left things, a door ajar, a coffee ring, the angle of a chair. She crouched by the brake pedal, lifted the ultrasound photo with tweezers, and looked up at the grey light. "Something's missing," she said. "What?" the rookie asked. "The mess." By 8:30, reporters gathered outside Whitfield Capital headquarters. Graham, in Navy and Consequence, read a statement. He spoke like a CEO managing a market shock, the crisis contained in vowels. He mentioned mental health, unspecified stress, the hope she had simply needed space. He did not say kidnapping. He did not say danger. His legal counsel stood just over his left shoulder like a shadow that charged by the hour. "Gladys is beloved," he said. "We are asking for privacy." Privacy was gone. In Dorchester, Allison Bennett, 3rd-grade teacher, older sister, keeper of the sentimental, clutched her coffee and stared at the TV. She was 2 years older than Gladys, and still held the storied family role of person who says what everyone else is thinking. She didn't run, Alison whispered to an empty kitchen. She dialed Gladys, straight to voicemail. She texted, "Pick up, not playing." She drove to Beacon Hill. At the brownstone, the doorman recognized Alison by her stubborn jaw. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and the cold scent of money. Alison found the house manager, a kindly woman who looked constantly on the edge of apology. "We haven't seen her," the woman said. "Mr. Whitfield has the police involved." "He has the narrative involved," Alison muttered. She walked to the nursery Gladys had half finished. A rocking chair, a mobile of paper cranes, a crib still in its box, because Graham insisted on a designer brand whose waitlist worked like a velvet rope for bassinets. Alison ran a finger along the chair's arm and felt a splinter. Small, real, human. She sat, let the chair creak, and cried for precisely 30 seconds. Then she stood up and turned into a weapon with sensible shoes. At the precinct, Vega took Alison's statement. "She said she'd meet me at the gala at 7, Alison said. "She had something to do first. She was vague, but she's been volunteering, quietly, at a shelter in Charlestown. Didn't want the foundation involved. She said, 'Real help doesn't survive a photo op.'" Vega nodded. The shelter, Jackson Street Women's Center, sat in a row of townhouses whose paint peeled like tired skin. Vega and Alison drove over. The director, a woman named Tasha, met them on the stoop with arms folded. "Gladys is good people," Tasha said. "Brought diapers and didn't Instagram them." "When did you last see her?" Vega asked. 2 nights ago. Said she was helping someone this morning. A woman named Celine. Bad situation. Husband's a cop over in Winthrop. She wanted to get out early. Gladys planned to drive her to a safe handoff point. "Where?" Tasha hesitated. "Neutral ground. Those big storage units off Route 1. Eden's Gate." "The idea is neither party knows the other's shelter." Vega wrote it down. Her phone buzzed with an email from a tech. "GPS pulls done, see attached," and a text from her captain. "Press once a line. Keep it bland." "You think Gladys ran?" Tasha asked. "I think people run to something," Vega said. "Fear, freedom, a myth about themselves. But they always run to something." Alison squeezed her keys. "She was running to a life she chose," she said. "We're going to find her." Vega nodded, already sliding keys into the ignition. "We are." As they pulled onto Route 1, Alison stared out the window at the strip malls and the car lots, and the giant flag whipping itself ragged in the wind. "He's already writing his statement," she said. "He's always writing statements." Vega tapped the steering wheel in time to a thought. "Let him," she said. "We're going to read the road. Eden's Gate." Storage sprawled like a grid of secrets just past a diner that served corned beef hash with a pride bordering on sin. Rows of units, blue doors, numbers stenciled in white. Security cameras blinked up on poles like distant warning stars. The manager, a man who'd lived his life in Red Sox hats, squinted at their badges and scrolled through footage. There, Gladys's white Range Rover rolled past at 5:49 a.m. Another vehicle, black panel van, no markings, turned in 2 minutes later. There was no footage of Gladys or the pregnant silhouette they wanted. A camera at the far end flickered and died, a coin battery failing in a cold morning. "Power hiccup," the manager said. "Any trouble's always when a battery forgets its job." Vega requested the logs, texts to techs, quietly asked for the security system's maintenance vendor. Meanwhile, Alison studied the screen as if she could scrub time with willpower. "Gladys met someone here," she said. "But we don't see her meet anyone," Vega turned to the man. "Do you keep a physical log of after-hours events? Alarms? Sensor trips?" He handed a clipboard, dusty and old school. At 6:02, a motion sensor recorded activity behind Unit B27. Another note, smudged. Camera 4 offline, 5:59:6:12. B27, Allison said. Who's renting it? Ah, the manager said, tapping keys. Merritt Holdings. Vega looked up sharp. Merritt? Like Sloane Merritt? Allison asked, her mouth already thin. Graham's PR czar? The manager shrugged. I just rent rectangles. Vega called it in. Within an hour, detectives had a warrant. B27 held a folded table, 2 office chairs, a blue moving blanket, a box of disposable gloves, a roll of gaffer tape, and the clean absence of fingerprints that meant someone had wiped their shame. Allison held herself still to keep from shaking. He knew, she said. Graham knew. Vega didn't answer. She was looking at a small scuff on the concrete, black rubber streaks next to a smear of something faintly reddish-brown. She thought of the word people feared to say, when something still might end well. Blood. She bagged a swab. Outside, wind rattled the blue doors. Somewhere in Boston, a press team ran through talking points. Somewhere else, a woman named Celine waited to be picked up and learned what it felt like to be stood up by safety. Vega's phone buzzed. Tech. Car's GPS log shows false zeros. Someone bathed it. But the onboard module, buried in hardwire, that one forgot to lie. I'm pulling the raw now. She texted back. Bless you in very secular ways. Allison stared at the clouds, sliding like grief across the sky. He's going to say this is rogue staff, she said. He's going to say he didn't know. Maybe he didn't, Vega said. Maybe he did. Either way, the road tells the truth. Graham sat in his office, surrounded by glass and view. Boston lay beneath him like a plate he could eat. Sloane Merritt stood by the window and fed him lines about compassion and responsibility, her voice silk on a razor. You need to stabilize the share price, she said. You look worried, but not undone. You look in control, but not cold. I am worried, Graham said, and I'm not in control. Sloane's smile never touched her eyes. It rarely did. She'd clawed her way from a foster home in Worcester to PR director at 29 and chief of communications by 32, a biography web pages called Self-Made, in a tone that guarded her from ever being soft. Vega wants to speak again, Graham said. If she had anything, she'd be in this office with a warrant, Sloane said. We cooperate, we posture, we keep options open. Don't talk about my wife like she's an option, he said, the temper under glass finally tapping. Don't we this? Sloane looked at him long enough to make the silence hot. You want me to be the villain? She asked softly. I can be that for you. But you hired me to protect this house. Don't shatter a window and blame me for the draft. The phone on his desk flashed. Building security. Detective Vega is here. Graham straightened his cuffs the way a man does when he wants to feel like a man. Let her in. Vega entered in a blazer that had seen more weather than his car collection. She placed a clear bag on the table. Inside, a small black slab with leads. That's your wife's secondary GPS, she said. The one connected to the dash isn't factory. This one is. Hardwired to the car's system. It logs whether or not you want it to. I think you paid for the upgraded package. Graham's eyes flicked to Sloane. She looked pleasantly blank, the smile of an expensive weapon in a velvet case. Where did it go? He asked. Pier 47, yes, Vega said. But before that, a detour. Eden's Gate Storage, Unit B27, rented to Merritt Holdings, your holding company for communications and brand. Cameras went off when the car arrived. A van arrived shortly after and left during the blackout. We're checking nearby traffic cameras. We'll find that van. Graham swallowed a small shame he'd been nursing since December. He'd used a private app on Gladys's phone to track her for 3 weeks after a fight about trust. He'd deleted it after seeing her go nowhere but the obstetrician, her sisters, a bakery, and a church where she lit a candle and cried. He hadn't told anyone, just as he'd never told the world that his father left when he was 9 with the TV and the dog. Unit B27 is a staging area, Vega said. It was wiped. There was trace blood. We don't know whose. If you know where your PR chief keeps a warehouse of shame, now would be a good time to say it. Sloane folded her arms. We rent staging spaces for crisis response, press kits, lighting. We do video statements. Do you do abductions? Allison asked from the doorway. She'd marched past a secretary with a righteousness that looked like a badge. Do you practice those too? Ms. Bennett, Vega said gently. Wait outside. No, Allison said. Say it to my face, Sloane. Say my sister ran. Sloane's eyes were almost kind. Ms. Bennett, she said, I am truly sorry this is happening, but I don't run warehouses of shame. I keep boxes of microphones. Vega slid photos across the table. The blue moving blanket, the gaffer tape, the scuff on concrete. Sloane's expression flickered, an emotion trying to get out of a locked room. Who else has access? Vega asked. Sloane hesitated. Our security vendor. Name, Black Line Protective, Head of Ops, Evan Carroll, Vega typed. The name came back with a face. Middle-aged, boxer's nose, decorated veteran, now a private contractor who believed in God, guns, and clean resolutions. Graham rubbed his thumb on the edge of the desk. Why would Evan? Why would anyone? Because someone gave them a reason, Vega said. Money, loyalty, a belief baked into them like bread. We're going to find the van, Mr. Whitfield. And if it leads to a lake house you forgot you owned, we'll be there. Sloane didn't move. You're insinuating. I'm doing my job, Vega said, and her voice dropped a register. And my job is not optics. A linen blind made the world look like old film. Gladys woke to it, and to the cool burn of something medical pricking her arm. She was on a couch, ankle-taped, head thick. She sat up too quickly, and the room tilted. Easy, someone said. A man with a boxer's nose, hands like careful tools, grey t-shirt, dog tags hidden under cotton. You twisted your ankle. Gladys tried to stand. Pain shot through her like a thrown knife. Who are you? Where am I? A safe place, he said. We're going to keep you calm, get you to sign some papers, clear up a misunderstanding. Then you go home. Where's home? Gladys asked. The one where my husband tells the press I ran, or the one where he says he loves me, but I've become an optic. The man's eyes flicked to a camera lens tucked in a corner. I'm Evan, he said. We're in New Hampshire. There are woods between you and road. Don't hurt yourself trying. Gladys swallowed her rising panic. Her hand went to her belly of its own accord. The baby thumped as if to say that panic was a luxury. You have to let me go, she said, voice steadying, because terror can't help you if it makes you stupid. I'm pregnant. Stress isn't a photo filter. Evan didn't answer. He taped gauze on her arm. He walked to a table where a laptop idled open to a blank document titled Settlement NDA Confidential. The door opened. Sloane Merritt walked in, wearing a field jacket rich women buy for authenticity. Gladys, Sloane said softly. I'm so glad we found you. Gladys laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Found? You hired a man to find me between a storage unit and a lake. Sloane's expression didn't break. It never did. Gladys saw it then. Sloane believed what she said, even when she rearranged truth like furniture. You've been under strain, Sloane said. You left early this morning. Graham is frantic. The press is a storm. Sign these. We release a statement together. You go home. We stabilize the company that pays for your charity dreams and all those cute little cranes in the nursery. You think I want your money? Gladys said. I want my life. Sloane's eyes sharpened. Your life is tied to ours, Gladys. If Whitfield Capital stumbles, Thousands of people lose their jobs, their health insurance. You want to be the virtue girl? Protect the herd. Protecting the herd by kidnapping a pregnant woman? Gladys asked. Is that on the branding deck? Sloane's jaw worked, a flicker of something like rage tightening her perfect face. You won't sign? I'll sign the truth, Gladys said. But not your version. Evan looked at Sloane. This isn't what I signed up for, he said. Quiet. Sloane turned to him with a calm designed to humiliate. You signed up to follow orders, she said, and to protect this company. Evan's gaze went to Gladys's stomach. He swallowed. I didn't sign up to hurt a kid. No one is hurting anyone, Sloane said. We're averting harm at scale. Gladys felt the baby roll, a live reminder that scale is a word people use when they've forgotten what one life weighs. She leaned forward. Evan, she said, do you have a daughter? He flinched. 11. What would you tell her to do if someone asked her to sign something when she was scared and trapped? Silence hung like thunder that decided not to hit. Evan pulled a chair to the door, sat with his forearms on his knees, and didn't look at Sloane. Gladys memorized the shape of the key on his belt. There's the version where you break a window and the summer air saves you. There's the version where you bide time and the calendar turns in your favor. Gladys chose the second. She drank water, breathed, and waited for a mistake. It arrived with the weather. The generator hiccuped when clouds muscled into rain. Evan stood to check it. The camera in the corner blinked and died. Gladys stood, her ankle screaming. She lunged, grabbed the key, jammed it at the doorknob like a prayer. The door opened to pine, rain, and the kind of cold that makes you alive. She ran. Where? Graham asked, staring at a map of New England like a man who'd forgotten its names. Vega stood by the screen with a laser pointer and a patience maligned as stubbornness by men who preferred luck. Traffic cam caught the black van near Amesbury, Vega said. Crossed into New Hampshire. 2 likely routes to lakes with properties registered to Black Line Protective's shell companies. We're here. She tapped a blue oval by Lake Harrow. We go now. Graham's hand shook as he grabbed his coat. Allison watched and filed the shake under human. She wanted to hate him with her whole body and found a sliver of something else lodged under her ribs. Pity or recognition. He was a man trying to unmake the man he'd let the money shape. They drove in a convoy of police SUVs. Rain ran on the windshield like transparent snakes. The radio crackled names and positions. Vega briefed them in clipped phrases. 2 suspects. 1 known, 1 unknown. Pregnant victim. De-escalate. No hero moves. Graham pressed his forehead to the glass and saw trees, streams, lines. Everything a long, dark blur. He remembered December, the fight in the kitchen where Gladys said, I feel invisible in rooms you built. And he said something about board cycles, and she said, you don't have to be the man your father was afraid of becoming. And he laughed, a short, cold thing he wanted to pull back, even as it left him. He had tracked her. He had said sorry. He had bought her a rocking chair. He had not changed the pace of his sentences. Vega's phone buzzed. A deputy on a side road. Footprint in mud. Bare. Small. Vega swore under her breath, flicked the siren, turned. Pines rose like steeples. Lake Harrow appeared without warning. Grey water, dark shore, a cabin crouched like a secret. Positions, Vega said, voice now the click of safety off. They flanked. Vega tapped the front door. Police. Inside. Voices. A chair scraped. The door opened. Evan Carrow held his hands out. She ran into the woods, he said. She's hurt. Bring a medic. On your knees, Vega said. Hands behind your head. He complied like he'd been waiting for an order that absolved him. Sloane came into view, hair damp, eyes bright with fury. This is a misunderstanding, she said. I'm counsel to Whitfield Capital. You're someone else's story now, Vega said. Face the wall. Graham stood in the doorway as deputies cuffed Sloane. She turned to him, the wordless accusation louder than sirens. You let me build this for you, and you abandoned me in it. Where is she? Graham asked, and the fury left his voice, leaving it hollow and honest. Where is my wife? Lake Path, Evan said, running. She's strong. Strong, Allison repeated, as if the word could be a rope. She bolted for the path. Gladys ran 10 minutes and years. Rain drilled her scalp. Mud grabbed her shoes until she became barefoot by accident. She fell twice, once on her knees, once hard on her side. She stood again because she had no theology beyond forward. Footsteps behind her, then voices that weren't chasing but calling her name like it mattered. Gladys! She turned, ready to throw checkbook words like shields. She saw Allison first, hair plastered to her face, eyes fierce and wet. Then she saw Graham behind her, unimportant and huge. Gladys, he said, throat raw. I'm so sorry. Words came to her like hail. She ducked them all. Don't! Not here! Vega caught up, breath steady. Life lived in running. She took Gladys's pulse with a hand that didn't shake. You're okay, Vega said. The baby? Gladys nodded. Active, she said, tears finding their way. Can we leave? Can we please just leave that house behind us? They walked out of the pines like a procession. Vega in front, Allison holding Gladys's arm, Graham behind, carrying the past like a box too heavy and too stupid to have ever bought. Hospitals smell like bleach and hope. Gladys lay in a bed near a window that offered a rectangle of rain. A fetal monitor drew lines that made music in a language you didn't need to speak to feel. A doctor came in with the gentle authority of a person who'd stayed up 2 decades of nights. You're dehydrated and bruised, but your labs are okay, she said. Baby's heart rate is strong. We want to keep you for observation. Gladys closed her eyes and let herself, for once, be someone who was cared for. Graham stood at the foot of the bed and did not approach like a man who had learned a new etiquette. I'll leave if you want, he said. Sit, she said, because dignity wasn't the same as cruelty. He sat like a man who knew he wasn't owed a chair. Allison hovered, protective and loud. I'll stay, she said to Gladys. Kick him out if his apology uses the word optics. Graham swallowed. Gladys, he said. I did not know Sloane planned this. I hired her to shield us from the worst parts of the world. I didn't realize she'd become one. She became what you rewarded, Gladys said. It wasn't spit. It was simple. You liked that she won. You didn't ask how. He nodded, a small, honest thing. Yes, Vega entered with a notepad, her presence somehow both gentle and steel. We'll need statements, she said. Evan? Gladys asked. What will happen to him? He cooperated, Vega said. He'll be charged. He's also willing to testify that Sloane planned the deception, that she framed the narrative about you running, that she hired Black Line for containment if you refused to sign a statement she drafted. Gladys felt sick, a dizziness that wasn't medical. She told me I was protecting the herd. Vega's jaw flexed. I've heard every lie a scared person tells themselves, she said. The savior ones are the most dangerous. Gladys gave her statement. She did not embellish. She did not make herself nobler. She described the storage unit, the van, the lake house, Sloane's jacket, the way Evan's thumb shook when he wrapped gauze on her arm. She included how she'd planned to meet Celine, how she'd felt complicit when Celine texted, "Are you here?" And she could not be. Vega listened like it was a profession and a sacrament. After, Gladys turned to Graham. I was going to help someone, she said. Not to be seen, just to be useful. You are more than useful, he said, breaking. You are the point. Then act like it, Allison said. Graham nodded, the second honest thing. Sloane and Evan will face charges, he said. I'll cooperate fully, and I'll resign. From the company? Gladys asked, surprised at the speed of relief that rolled through her. From the story where I'm the man who can fix everything if you just be quiet, he said. From the idea that my power is worth other people's harm. The doctor returned with a nurse and paperwork. Gladys signed forms that were not traps. Allison fluffed a pillow with a competence earned in classrooms and heartbreak. Vega stood at the window, watching rain stub itself out on the glass. On TV that afternoon, Sloane Merritt's arrest made footage loop. Commentators called it a shocking turn. The market did what markets do, flinched, then recalculated. In a smaller corner of the screen, a crawl ran the weather. Rain tapering by evening, patchy fog overnight. In the ward, Gladys slept for the first real time in months. Morning cracked open to a calm that felt borrowed. The nurse coiled Gladys's IV, removed the tape with care. The baby's heartbeat sounded like small hooves on a field. Graham looked smaller without a suit jacket, more like the boy who taught her to ride a bike on a dead-end street in Cambridge one summer, when money was a future and not a map. They'd met at a diner, in a booth that smelled like syrup, when he was nobody. She'd loved the way his eyes warmed when he listened. Somewhere along the road to Billionaire, he'd outsourced that. "Why did you track me?" she asked. His head dropped. "Because I was afraid," he said. "Afraid you would leave the life I made before I learned how to be in it with you." "And did the app help?" she asked. "Did it make me more yours?" His laugh was ugly and short. "It made me more ashamed." She let the silence sit between them until it cooled. "My favorite version of you," she said at last, "was the man who fixed a toaster with a butter knife and a YouTube video. My least favorite is the man who fixes feelings with NDAs." He smiled despite himself, a flash of the diner boy. "I miss him, too." A volunteer knocked and peeked in. "Ms. Bennett, there's someone named Celine here. Says she won't leave until she sees you, but also that she's happy to leave if you want." Gladys sat up, surprised heat in her chest. "Send her in." Celine entered like a woman expected to be turned away. She was 30, pretty in a way the world punished, with a bruise fading yellow along her jaw. She carried a plastic grocery bag like a shield. Inside, a pack of diapers, a chocolate bar, a paperback romance with a cracked spine. "I wanted to tell you I'm okay," Celine said quickly. "My cousin picked me up. We went to her place in Malden. My husband, he's suspended. Tasha connected me with legal aid. I'm safe." Gladys swallowed a knot. "I'm sorry I didn't make it." "You almost died trying to get there," Celine said, half laughing in disbelief. "Which, isn't necessary next time." They both cried a little and pretended they weren't. Celine handed her the chocolate like a sacrament. "For later," she said. "Also, don't hate me, but I called the TV station to tell them you didn't run. That someone took you." Gladys blinked. "You did?" Celine shrugged, a gesture part apology, part triumph. "You helped me," she said. "I helped you." Graham watched, quiet. He thought of the foundation gala, the speeches about maternal health, the jazz quartet hired to make compassion sound rich. He thought of this moment in a hospital room, two women giving each other dignity without a budget. Vega returned with updates. Sloane had lawyered up, but Evan's statement made the cage tight. The DA planned to charge Sloane with conspiracy and unlawful restraint, Evan with kidnapping and accessory. Blackline Protective's contract would be audited into oblivion. The storage unit logs, the camera outage, the GPS core, all of it formed a map that led to a very mortal culprit. Choice. Choice looks glamorous in TED Talks, Vega said. In case files, it's usually a receipt. When she left, Alison sat on the edge of Gladys's bed. "Come stay with me a while," she said. "The baby's room can be my second bedroom. We'll eat cheap cereal and watch reruns where people tell the truth in 22 minutes. Gladys smiled. "Deal." Graham stood. "I'll send your things." "I said stay with me," Alison told Gladys, not looking at him. Then, softer. "You can visit." He nodded, acceding without any legal memo making his surrender look noble. "I'm going to resign," he said. "Hold a press conference. Tell the truth." "You're going to be sued," Alison said. "I deserve some of it." Gladys watched him and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in months. Compassion that wasn't a trap. Redemption wasn't a speech. It was a long, dumb road paved with days where you didn't choose yourself first. "Be better," she said, "even if no one claps." A week later, a podium waited in a room where men usually bragged. Cameras congregated, microphones tilted like hungry mouths. Graham walked out without a tie, that small unarmor intentional. He had not slept enough. He looked like a man who had been introduced to himself at last. "Good afternoon," he said. No legal counsel flanked him. Sloane had been arraigned that morning, her expression carved in a courtroom light that made everyone look more human than they intended. "I hired people who did harm," Graham said. "I made a culture that rewarded winning without asking how we won. I believed the story that if the company thrived, all sins blurred into strategy. That story is a lie. My wife, Gladys Bennett, did not run. She was forced, under the supervision of my company's head of communications and a contractor. She was taken to a secondary location to compel her to sign a statement that never should have been drafted. This is the worst failure of my life, and while I did not order it, I created the weather where it happened. I am resigning effective immediately. I will cooperate fully with the investigation. I will donate my severance to the Jackson Street Women's Center and to legal defense funds for domestic violence survivors. I don't expect applause. I expect accountability." Questions flew. He answered only a few. How much did he know? Less than he should have. Why didn't he say kidnapping in the first hours? Because he had believed an old, comfortable story about women being fragile and leaving. "Will you and your wife reconcile?" a reporter asked, voice curious and hungry. "That is not a question for a podium," he said. "It's a question for a kitchen table." He left to a murmur that wasn't triumph and wasn't hatred. Something quieter. The market slouched and then adjusted around the hole where his name had been the brand. At Alison's apartment in Dorchester, Gladys watched with her feet up on an ottoman and a bowl of cereal balanced on her belly. Celine and Tasha sat on the couch with her like an improbable future. The baby rolled, as if applauding with tiny limbs. On the table lay a stack of community center flyers, a draft of a plan that looked more like purpose than optics. Prenatal classes, taught by nurses on their days off, a ride-share network to get women to appointments, a small grant fund for women who needed to leave now. A key turned in the lock. Alison walked in, carrying a bag of groceries and 3 cheap bouquets. "We're making our own gala," she announced, banging cabinets like cymbals. Gladys smiled, let herself lean back, and for the first time since the harbor fog, felt an oxygen that didn't have to justify itself. Later that night, the doorbell rang. Graham stood on the stoop, holding a lasagna like an apology. "You made that?" Alison asked skeptically. "I assembled it," he said. "The butcher took pity on me." Gladys stepped into the hallway. "We have food," she said. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to show you I'm learning how to be small. I'll leave it and go." She took the pan, warm through the towel. "Stay for a plate," she said, surprising herself. "Eat at the coffee table and don't talk like a press release." He smiled, not relieved exactly. Gratitude had muscle now. Okay. They ate, They talked about shows that ended badly and recipes that didn't. They didn't mention Sloane. They didn't say redemption. They washed dishes in a sink with water too hot and laughed when the soap made Mount Suds. When Graham left, he looked at Gladys the way people look at the ocean. They know it could be deadly, and they know it could save them, and they step back anyway out of respect. In bed, Gladys put a hand on her stomach. The baby rolled, a moon under skin. She whispered to the dark, to the future, to the long road of days. We get to start over every morning. Gladys didn't go back to the brownstone. She and Alison painted the second bedroom a quiet green and built the crib without a wait list. Graham sold his company shares to fund a trust that couldn't be rebranded. He testified. He learned how to sit in a hard plastic chair in a church basement and listen without fixing. Sloane pled to a reduced charge and gave speeches in a prison classroom about the soft, expensive lies she had believed. Evan wrote letters to his daughter, who answered with drawings of trees that looked like lungs. When Gladys went into labor in April, the room wasn't curated. It was bright and ordinary and holy. She named the baby May. At home, she held May while Alison read out loud from paperbacks Celine brought by. At the window, the city moved, complicated and alive. Gladys felt the weight of one life, and it was enough. If stories like this speak to you, resilience, dignity, justice, second chances, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going.
You're black, you can't work here. Billionaire fires black waitress. What happens next? What if the words that change your life forever come from someone you least expect to learn from? Jasmine Clark had worked at Meridian's finest restaurant for 3 years, her gentle smile greeting every customer who walked through those glass doors. At 35, she'd built a reputation for remembering everyone's favorite order, their children's names, even their anniversary dates. But on this particular Tuesday evening, as rain drummed against the windows and the dining room buzzed with quiet conversations, she never imagined that one customer would speak words so cruel they'd echo in her mind for weeks. The man in the expensive suit had seemed like any other wealthy patron until the moment he looked at her with cold eyes and said something that would shatter her world completely. Yet sometimes, the most painful moments become doorways to the most beautiful transformations. Where are you watching from tonight? The Meridian restaurant had always felt like a second home to Jasmine. Nestled in the heart of downtown, it attracted politicians, business executives, and families celebrating special occasions. The warm lighting cast everything in gold, and the soft jazz playing overhead made even the busiest nights feel intimate. Jasmine loved how she could make people feel welcome, how a genuine conversation about their day could turn a stranger into a friend. That evening started like any other. She'd already served the Henderson family, celebrating their daughter's engagement, and helped Mr. Patterson choose the perfect wine for his wife's birthday dinner. Her section was nearly full when Richard Blackwell walked in. At 42, he commanded attention without trying. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people made in months, and his confident stride suggested someone accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. Jasmine approached his table with her usual warmth. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Meridian. I'm Jasmine, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." She placed the menu down gently, noting he barely looked up from his phone. "Just bring me the salmon and a glass of your most expensive red wine," he said curtly, still typing, "and make sure it's perfect. I don't have time for mistakes." "Of course, sir. Our salmon is prepared with a honey glaze tonight, and I think you'll really enjoy—" "I didn't ask for a conversation," Richard interrupted, finally looking up. His eyes were sharp, impatient. "Just bring the food." Jasmine nodded politely and headed to the kitchen, brushing off his rudeness. She'd encountered difficult customers before, but when she returned with his wine, perfectly chilled and poured, Richard's expression had changed completely. He studied her face with a strange intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You know," he said slowly, setting down his glass, I've been thinking. This establishment has a certain reputation to maintain. His voice carried a tone she'd never heard before, cold and calculating. Our clientele expects a particular standard of service, and frankly, I don't think you're the right fit for this place. Jasmine felt her stomach drop, though she couldn't understand why. I'm sorry, sir. Is there something wrong with your wine? It's not about the wine, Richard said, leaning back in his chair. It's about something else entirely. The restaurant around them seemed to fade into background noise as Richard's words hung in the air. Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine, though she couldn't pinpoint why. She'd handled countless difficult customers, but something in his tone felt different, personal in a way that made no sense. I don't understand. Sir, she said quietly, maintaining her professional composure even as her hands began to tremble slightly. Have I done something to upset you? Richard took a slow sip of his wine, studying her over the rim of his glass. You know, I built my company from nothing. Started with a small loan and turned it into an empire worth hundreds of millions. You know how I did that? He didn't wait for her answer. By recognizing what belongs and what doesn't. By understanding that some people simply don't fit in certain environments. Jasmine's throat tightened. She glanced around the dining room, hoping to catch the eye of her manager, but everyone seemed absorbed in their own conversations. The weight of Richard's stare felt suffocating. Where's your manager? He asked suddenly, his voice cutting through her thoughts. I need to speak with them immediately. Before Jasmine could respond, Mr. Torres, the restaurant manager, approached their table. He was a kind man in his 50s who'd always treated his staff like family. Good evening, sir. I'm Carlos Torres, the manager. Is everything all right? Richard stood up, his presence somehow filling the entire space around their table. I'm Richard Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries. You might have heard of me. Mr. Torres nodded respectfully. I've been watching your establishment, considering it for some important business dinners. But I have to say, I'm concerned about your hiring practices. Our hiring practices, sir? Mr. Torres looked confused, glancing between Richard and Jasmine. This waitress, Richard said, not even looking at Jasmine. She doesn't represent the image this restaurant should project. You're in an upscale neighborhood, serving influential clients. You need staff who fit the demographic your customers expect to see. The words hit Jasmine like a physical blow. She understood now, and the realization made her legs feel weak. Mr. Torres's face went pale as he processed what Richard was really saying. Sir, I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Torres began. You're black. You can't work here, Richard said quietly, finally turning to look directly at Jasmine. It's that simple. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever, broken only by the soft clinking of silverware from nearby tables where other diners remained blissfully unaware of the cruelty that had just unfolded. The words hung in the air like poison, and Jasmine felt the world tilt around her. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, remembered birthdays, and gentle conversations with customers. All of it suddenly felt meaningless. Her hands shook as she gripped her order pad, the paper crumpling under the pressure of her fingers. Mr. Torres stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Sir, I need you to leave immediately. We don't tolerate discrimination in this establishment. But Richard remained calm, pulling out his phone. I think you misunderstand the situation, Carlos. I'm considering investing in this block, potentially buying out several businesses, including this one. I'd hate to see good employees lose their jobs because management made poor decisions. The threat was clear, and Jasmine watched as the color drained from Mr. Torres's face. She knew the restaurant had been struggling financially since the pandemic. The thought of her co-workers losing their jobs because of her made her stomach churn. It's okay, Mr. Torres, Jasmine whispered, her voice barely audible. It's okay. No, it's not okay, came a voice from behind them. An elderly woman at table 12 had stood up, her silver hair catching the restaurant's warm lighting. Jasmine recognized her, Mrs. Eleanor Franklin, a regular customer who always ordered the vegetable soup and left generous tips. At 78, she moved slowly but with dignity, her cane tapping softly against the floor as she approached. Young man, Mrs. Franklin said, addressing Richard with the kind of authority that comes from decades of life experience. "I've been coming to this restaurant for 15 years. I've watched Jasmine work here, and she's one of the finest young women I've ever met. She remembered my late husband's favorite dessert and brought it to me on our anniversary last year, without being asked. That kind of kindness is rare in this world." Richard looked annoyed at the interruption. "Ma'am, this is a private conversation." "Nothing private about cruelty, son," Mrs. Franklin continued. "You think your money makes you better than others. I've seen men like you before. My generation fought wars against people who thought some humans were worth less than others." Jasmine felt tears threatening, not just from Richard's cruelty but from Mrs. Franklin's unexpected defense. "Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." The restaurant had grown quiet now, other diners turning to watch the confrontation unfold, sensing that something significant was happening beyond a simple customer complaint. Mrs. Franklin continued speaking, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "My father owned a small business during the Depression. Times were hard, money was scarce, but you know what he taught me? He said the measure of a person isn't in their bank account. It's in how they treat others when they have power over them." Richard's composure finally cracked. "Look, lady, you don't understand business." "I understand plenty about business," Mrs. Franklin interrupted, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small, worn photograph and held it up. "This is my late husband, Harold. He built Franklin Electronics from nothing. Maybe you've heard of it?" Richard's expression changed instantly. Franklin Electronics had been acquired by a major tech corporation for billions just 5 years ago. Everyone in business circles knew the story. "Harold always said that the people who serve others with dignity deserve our respect, not our disdain," Mrs. Franklin continued. "Jasmine has served my family with grace for years. She knows my granddaughter's name, asks about my arthritis, and always makes sure my soup isn't too hot. That's worth more than all your millions, young man." By now, the entire restaurant was watching. Other customers began standing, showing their support for Jasmine. A businessman at table 8 called out, "Jasmine helped me plan my proposal here last year. She's an angel." A family near the window nodded in agreement, the mother saying, "She always makes our kids feel special." Richard looked around, realizing he was completely outnumbered. His calculated confidence began to crumble as he saw the faces of people who knew Jasmine's character. Mr. Torres stepped forward again, his voice stronger now. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave immediately. And you should know, we have security cameras that recorded everything you said. Your behavior tonight will be reported to the appropriate authorities." But something unexpected happened. As Richard reached for his coat, his hand brushed against a small frame in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out, a photo of a young black woman in a graduation cap and gown. His sister Diane, who'd died in a car accident 3 years ago. The sister who'd always called him out when his ambition made him cruel. The sister who would have been ashamed of the man he'd become. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. For the first time that evening, Richard's mask completely fell away, and the weight of his own words crashed down on him like a tidal wave. Richard stared at the photograph in his hands, and suddenly he wasn't a powerful billionaire anymore. He was just a broken man remembering his sister's laugh. Diane would have torn into him for what he'd just done. She'd dedicated her life to civil rights law, fighting against exactly the kind of discrimination he'd just displayed. The memory of her disappointed face whenever he'd made cruel jokes or callous remarks came flooding back. Richard's voice cracked. He looked up at Jasmine, who stood quietly, surrounded by customers who'd become her defenders. "I'm sorry. That was unforgivable." Mrs. Franklin studied him carefully. "Sorry is just the beginning, young man. What matters is what you do next." Richard nodded slowly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back before handing it to Jasmine. "This is my personal number. I want to make this right. Not because I have to, but because my sister would never forgive me if I didn't." He paused, looking at the photo again. She always believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. Jasmine took the card with trembling hands, unsure what to say. Mr. Torres stepped protectively beside her. "Jasmine doesn't owe you anything, Mr. Blackwell." "You're absolutely right," Richard said. "But maybe there's a way I can learn from this. My company has diversity programs, but I realize now they're just words on paper. I need to understand what real change looks like." He looked directly at Jasmine. "Would you consider helping me figure that out? Not as my employee, but as someone who could teach me to be better." Over the following months, something beautiful unfolded. Richard didn't just apologize, he transformed. He worked with Jasmine to completely overhaul his company's hiring and mentorship programs. Mrs. Franklin, delighted by the unexpected turn of events, became an unofficial advisor, sharing stories about her husband's business philosophy over their weekly lunches at Meridian. The restaurant thrived, too. Word spread about the night when customers stood up for their beloved waitress, and people came from across the city to experience the warmth that had always made Meridian special. Jasmine was promoted to assistant manager, her natural gift for making people feel valued finally recognized in a formal way. 6 months later, Richard returned to Meridian for dinner, no longer the arrogant man who'd walked in that rainy Tuesday evening. He sat at table 12, Mrs. Franklin's old spot, which the restaurant had dedicated to her memory after she passed peacefully in her sleep. When Jasmine brought him his usual order, he smiled genuinely for the first time in years. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing me who I could become. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become doorways to the most profound transformations. Sometimes cruelty can be conquered by kindness, and sometimes the most unlikely people become teachers and friends." If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of redemption and hope.